You are hungry, but you cannot hunt. Your ankle is swollen. Your hands shake when you try to stand. And somewhere beyond the camp, the hunters are already moving through the grass, with spears in their hands. So what happens to you? For most of human history, that question was not rare. It was ordinary. Children could not hunt big game. Pregnant mothers could not always travel far. Injured adults could be trapped beside the fire for days. Elders could lose speed, teeth, vision, or strength. And yet, the human story did not end with only the strongest eating. That is the strange thing. Stone Age camps often fed people who could not hunt, because hunting was never the whole economy. A camp was not just a group of killers chasing animals. It was a living network of gatherers, children, elders, toolmakers, storytellers, healers, watchers, and people who remembered where food appeared after rain. If you imagine one heroic hunter feeding a helpless tribe, you are already looking at the past through a modern movie camera. The real picture is quieter. It is more practical. And it may explain why you are alive. Start with the biggest mistake. Hunting is dramatic, so it steals the spotlight. A spear entering an animal looks like survival in a single image. But for many hunter-gatherers, the daily calories came from a mix of foods: plants, tubers, nuts, berries, honey, eggs, fish, shellfish, small animals, and meat when a hunt succeeded. This matters because the Stone Age was not one lifestyle. It lasted for millions of years in changing climates, across deserts, forests, coasts, mountains, grasslands, and ice edges. No single camp can represent all of it. But one pattern appears again and again in human societies that live from wild food. Food moves, not always fairly, not always gently, not always for the same reason, but food moves from the person who has it to people who need it, and that movement is one of the deepest human technologies. Michael Gervin, an anthropologist who reviewed food transfers in small-scale forager and forager-farmer societies, described food sharing as a common feature of groups that depend on wild foods. He did not reduce it to one simple explanation. That is important. People shared because of kinship, friendship, reputation, obligation, pressure, reciprocity, and risk. Reciprocity means today someone helps you, and later you may help them. It does not have to be a written contract. It can be memory. It can be a glance. It can be the knowledge that luck changes. Because hunting is risky. One day, you return with meat. The next day, you return with nothing. A strong hunter can miss. A skilled tracker can lose a trail. A sudden storm can erase prints. A wound can turn the best provider into the person sitting beside the fire, waiting for someone else to hand over food. So the camp feeds people who cannot hunt, partly because tomorrow anyone can become that person. That is not weakness. That is insurance. Not the kind with papers and signatures, but the older kind, built from faces, memory, and repeated meals. Richard Lee's famous work with the Jew/Hohansi of the Kalahari helped change the old image of hunter-gatherers as people always on the edge of starvation. Lee found that gathered plant foods were extremely important, and that people obtained a varied diet with far less daily labor than many modern outsiders expected. That does not mean life was easy. It means survival was organized differently. A person who did not kill an animal was not automatically useless. The camp needed people who dug roots, cracked nuts, carried water, watched children, repaired tools, made cordage, prepared hides, gathered firewood, remembered stories, recognized animal behavior, and noticed danger before it arrived. Now picture the camp. The sun is low. The ground is warm. Smoke bends sideways from a small fire. A child with dusty knees watches a strip of meat curl above the flames. An older woman sits close by, splitting tough plant fibers into cord. A man with a bandaged foot leans against a log, unable to join the next hunt. Nearby, someone grinds seeds. Someone else scrapes a hide. Two children copy the movements with tiny stones. Nobody in this scene is doing nothing. Even the person who cannot walk far may be watching, teaching, remembering, warning, or simply healing. And healing mattered. At Shanidar Cave in Iraq, archaeologists found Neanderthal remains that became central to debates about care in deep prehistory. Shanidar I was an adult Neanderthal with serious injuries and impairments, including damage to the arm, signs of a limp, and likely vision problems. Researchers such as Eric Trinkhaus studied these remains, and later scholars including Penny Spikins and Lorna Tilley argued that long survival after serious injury can make sense only in a social world where others sometimes helped. Care is a careful word here. Bones do not record kindness directly. They do not show you who brought water, who softened food, or who sat nearby during fever. But healed injuries can show survival. Survival with major impairment can suggest accommodation. Accommodation means other people change their behavior so the injured person could keep living. That is not fantasy. That is a cautious reading of damaged bones. There is another famous case, far older than farming. At Dmanisi, in present-day Georgia, researchers found early Homo remains about 1.77 million years old, including a skull from an older individual who had lost nearly all teeth before death. Some scientists have suggested that survival without most teeth may point to help from others, perhaps access to softer foods. Others warn that this is not proof of feeding by the group. That caution matters. A truthful story does not say, "This proves compassion exactly like today." A truthful story says, "This is consistent with survival in a social setting where food and support could be shared." And that is already powerful. Because if early humans and their relatives were only ruthless competitors, people with severe injuries, missing teeth, or limited mobility would disappear from the record much faster. Instead, the record gives you hints. Not a perfect movie. Hints. You also see the logic in children. Human children are expensive. They are born helpless, grow slowly, and take many years before they can reliably feed themselves. A young chimpanzee becomes competent much faster than a human child. Your ancestors paid a huge price for long childhoods. Why would evolution allow that? Because the camp did not expect each child to pay for itself immediately. Kristen Hawkes and colleagues studied Hadza foragers in Tanzania and developed ideas connected to the grandmother hypothesis. The grandmother hypothesis is the idea that older women helped human families by gathering and processing foods that children could not easily get for themselves. In plain English, grandmothers mattered because they turned knowledge, time, and skill into calories for younger people. This does not mean every grandmother in every Stone Age camp played the same role. It means older people could be valuable without being the fastest runners. An elder might know which tubers are safe, where water remains in a dry season, how to read clouds, which berries ripen first, and which path avoids a predator's den. That knowledge is food before it becomes food. So when a camp feeds an elder who cannot hunt, it may not be feeding a burden. It may be feeding a memory bank, and memory can save lives. There is another layer. In many forager societies, large game is difficult to hide and difficult to eat alone. A big animal is too much meat for one person before it spoils. Sharing turns a temporary surplus into social credit. It turns luck into relationships. It turns one hunter's success into many people's survival. But sharing can also be tense. People may demand food. People may mock a successful hunter to stop him from becoming arrogant. People may expect generosity because everyone knows that meat came from a risky world, not just from personal greatness. That is why the past is more interesting than a simple moral lesson. Stone Age camps did not feed non-hunters because they were modern charities. They did it because cooperation worked. The twist is that feeding people who could not hunt may have made hunters stronger, not weaker. A hunter needs a childhood before he can hunt. He needs someone to feed him when he is small. He needs elders to teach him tracks, winds, stone, fire, and danger. He needs others to feed his children when he is away. He needs care when a cut becomes infected. He needs people to share with him when his hunt fails. The strong hunter is not the opposite of the dependent person. The strong hunter used to be the dependent person, and one day he may become dependent again. That cycle is the hidden engine. Birth, childhood, skill, risk, injury, aging, memory, death. A camp survives not by pretending some stages do not exist, but by moving food across them. Sarah Blaffer-Hrdy, who studied the evolution of human caregiving, argued that human children are often raised by more than just their biological mothers. The term for this is alloparenting. It means care from others, fathers, grandmothers, siblings, aunts, uncles, and unrelated helpers. In plain English, your species evolved in a world where a baby could be held, watched, or fed by more than one pair of hands. That changes everything. If children are shared responsibilities, then food must be shared too. If illness is common, then care must be part of survival. If skill takes years to learn, then the group must carry learners before learners become producers. Your brain, your childhood, and your long life all make more sense in a species that feeds people before they can repay the meal. Now, return to the camp. The injured man near the fire receives a piece of roasted tuber. He does not run after deer today. He cannot, but he sharpens a stone edge for someone else. He tells a young hunter where the herds crossed last cold season. He watches a toddler crawl too close to the flames and pulls the child back. Across the fire, an old woman chews tough food first, softening it for a child. A teenager brings water. A hunter drops a strip of meat beside someone whose hands are too swollen to work. No one writes a rule. No one signs a moral code. The rule lives in repetition. You eat because one day you will give. You give because one day you will need. And even when someone can never fully repay, the camp may still gain from keeping that person alive, because value is not always measured in muscle. This is the part modern life often forgets. You are taught to ask what a person produces right now. How much output? How much speed? How much profit? How useful are they this minute? But your ancestors lived inside a longer calculation. A baby produces nothing today, but may become tomorrow's gatherer, parent, artist, toolmaker, or healer. An injured adult produces less today, but may recover next month. An elder moves slowly today, but may carry 50 years of remembered droughts, migrations, conflicts, births, and mistakes. A camp that feeds only the perfect body destroys its own future. That is why the phrase, survival of the fittest, can mislead you. Fitness in evolution does not mean the strongest individual standing alone. It means the traits that help genes survive across generations. In humans, those traits included learning, bonding, teaching, sharing, and caring for people during weakness. Your ancestors were not soft because they shared food. They were dangerous because they shared food. A lone predator has teeth. A human camp has memory. A lone hunter has strength. A human camp has stored knowledge inside living people. A lone person can starve after one bad week. A sharing group can spread risk across many stomachs. This does not make the Stone Age peaceful or perfect. People fought. People excluded others. Scarcity could turn cruel. A band under extreme pressure might make brutal choices. Honesty requires that darkness, but the broader human pattern is still remarkable. Again and again, the evidence points away from the fantasy that prehistoric life was only every person for themselves. Your ancestors survived because they built small worlds where food, care, knowledge, and obligation moved between bodies. The person who could not hunt was not outside the system. That person was proof the system existed. Today, You live with the same ancient design hidden under modern surfaces. A hospital meal, a parent cooking for a sick child, a friend bringing soup, taxes funding care for strangers, insurance spreading risk, a family feeding someone who just lost work, a community sending help after a storm. These are not modern inventions from nowhere. They are new forms of an old human answer. What happens when you are hungry and you cannot hunt? Someone brings food to the fire, and because they did, the human story keeps going.